Hello and welcome back to the Pop Culture Powerhouses. It is Pride Month, so we have
It
got
is.
some gay pop culture icons this week. We have got the one and only trickster god Loki, and
Yes.
the ever mysterious, the ever difficult to spot Mystique. Two of, I would say, the most famously queer superheroes.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Right up there with maybe like an Iceman. Um,
Yeah.
when I think of these two characters, when I think of gay superheroes and gay superhero characters, these are two of the first.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah,
Top of the
especially with
list.
how much mainstream coverage they've got over the years
Yeah.
as well. Um, very very cool to see. Anyway, as always, we've got 6 categories to discuss.
We do.
Iconicness, individuality, quality of adaptations, legacy, relatability, and personal preference.
Mm.
Let's get on to iconicness.
I'm trying to think this because you've got Loki is one of the top iconic characters of the MCU.
Of the MCU, absolutely.
Yeah.
Before the MCU, he would have been drifting into obscurity. Now, absolute icon.
Well, before the MCU, you could even say that 50% of people would probably be like, "Oh, the Norse god guy, like that
Yeah.
guy." They wouldn't associate him with Marvel.
Loki, was that the thing in the mask?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the MCU has skyrocketed him to like the forefront of their
And
characters or whatever.
a big part of that credit has to obviously go to Tom Hiddleston, such a good
Oh,
portrayal. But
yeah.
they've used Loki really well, and it's paid off. He's a very interesting character.
Yeah, and they've told a really good story arc for his character as well in the MCU that has hooked people into that character. So
yeah. Mystique has obviously been a big part of like the X-Men mythos since her inception in the late 70s. But she definitely got propelled to like superstardom during the original X-Men animated show in the 90s, and then obviously the Fox films.
Yeah, especially the Fox films.
Yeah, she was a huge part of them. Which again, like I know a lot of people who wouldn't consider themselves superhero fans who watched them Fox films back in the day, and they were like, Mystique is the GOAT. And no doubt in my mind that a lot of teenage boys realised some things about themselves.
They enjoyed blue people.
Yeah.
They were looking at Smurfs a whole new way.
Yeah. Mystique walked so avatars could run. That's all I'm saying. So like genuinely iconicness I would probably have pretty even. But bear in mind this is the pop culture powerhouses. I'm going to think of them as icons in regards to pop culture. And I think Mystique does just take the cake there. Because it's been about 20 years since the Fox X-Men films first like put her on the big screen. And she's still an icon.
Yeah, we haven't actually really had a live action Mystique. Obviously, we got the First Class stuff.
Yeah.
But even that was a while ago now.
Yeah, with Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah, so it's like, it's been a while whereas like we had Loki's season 2 like last year. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I could agree.
Mystique could just pick at the post there.
Yeah.
Individuality. I would say first and foremost, they are both very individual characters.
Yes.
But ironically, they're both very similar in the sense of they like to trick people and make people see things they don't really see.
Yeah, they're both very tricky.
Yes.
And big tricksters. I think part of me wants to say Mystique is slightly more individual, purely for the fact that Loki was an actual Norse god before he was used by Marvel. And they essentially just ripped that off.
Yeah.
Which is what it's meant to be. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, he is.
Do we know if the Norwegians ever got paid for that, by the
way? Did the Vikings ever get their paycheck in the mail? Whereas Mystique, obviously, quite individual in that sense. of
Genuinely
choices she hasn't ripped off.
quite a unique and individual character in that sense. Like even other shapeshifters don't feel.
Well, yeah, they don't have the depth that her character does.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I feel like if someone was to ask me to like think of a shapeshifter character, I feel like Mystique would be where my mind instantly goes. And to make shapeshifter, which is such a kind of common power, your own, is really impressive.
Yeah. And I think it's partly because she's not all about the shape-shifting. There's more to her than just that. Whereas a lot of shape-shifting characters, it's like that's their only thing. There's no depth to what their character's been through and stuff.
I completely agree. Quality of adaptations. I assume we're only talking about Marvel adaptations of Loki here.
Well, yeah.
Not going to go into the Norse mythology or Jim Carrey's The Mask or anything like that. No, just Marvel.
Well, I mean,
adaptations.
if you start doing that, then it's actually Marvel as an adaptation of the original
exactly.
media, which is
so
the
it
Norse
gets
god.
messy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are only
No.
Marvel interpretations of Loki.
Yes. So
I
from
would
comic
say
to film and to TV.
yes, and he's been in a number of animated shows.
True. He has.
I would say very consistent. He's got this, like almost like the Count Dooku meme, signature look of superiority.
Yes.
I would say the character development we saw for Loki in the MCU has, without necessarily happening in the shows he's appeared in, also kind of affected them though. So despite being evil for like 2, nearly 3 Marvel films,
Yes.
in shows he's already being portrayed as a bit softer, not in like a bad way, but like if he is a villain, he's like a I can talk you down villain, not a we have to fight villain.
Yeah.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean his MCU adaptation has fundamentally changed the character.
Yeah, he and the like ending of season 2 of Loki kind of took his character to, yes, it's been done in the comics, but it's like that's not the main Loki. That was like a
Exactly.
story that was told in the comics. So it's like his MCU adaptation is solid, not necessarily the true like default Loki, but still a very good adaptation of him.
I feel like the MCU had a very good idea of Loki before the Loki show, in the sense of he was out for himself, but if he cared about you, he would try and help you, but not to risk his own neck too much. And the Loki show is still very good, but because he's kind of trapped in this time loop thing, you get a lot of character development where he becomes very worried about things because the picture is now bigger than him, which I think is on character.
Yes.
But it feels weird because it's a weird situation. And I feel like Tom Hiddleston's likability while playing Loki made them want him to be more of a hero than a villain. Ironically, for the 10-year anniversary posters, Loki was the only one to get a hero and a villain poster.
What champion.
Very, very cool. I would say overall the quality of the adaptations for Loki though are pretty good.
Yeah.
Every time he's appeared in cartoons and stuff, it's been a solid episode.
Yeah.
Mystique.
I would say, not going off this week's podcast episode where we talked about the origin Mystique, the film adaptation actually quite a little bit different.
Yes.
Obviously, most people who have only seen the films will think, oh, that's Magneto's like right hand woman. But actually there's way more to her than that. But that's almost similar to Loki, like they've chosen just a specific kind of story of hers.
I think I'm not as confident with the source material of Mystique, but I think the changes made in the Fox's world initially were a symptom of the 2000s, in the sense of we don't want the woman to be a fully fleshed out character. She's just
Yeah.
kind of there as kind of a what's the name of like the spy who's like seductive? It's like got a name. And you know
Oh,
what I mean? It's like the
yeah.
seductive assassin in like French, whatever the fuck it is.
Mm.
They kind of turn Mystique more into that kind of a character when she's much more intelligent in the comics.
Yes.
They definitely rescued it a little bit with X-Men First Class,
Mm.
but because it's still supposed to be the same timeline as the original ones,
Mm.
it fell a bit into the trap. They changed her story quite a lot, but overall, I would say the character of Mystique is
Yeah.
very, very good, and I think I feel like she's still an interesting and a good adaptation overall in the X-Men films, but maybe not the most faithful adaptation.
Yes. I can agree with that.
I think Loki has more faithful
Yeah.
adaptations.
I would agree.
If you want a faithful adaptation of Mystique, you'd want to go for the X-Men original series.
Yeah. I
Because
mean,
that's where you get to see like the story of how
maybe
Nightcrawler came to be and stuff.
X-Men 97 will somehow bring it
Yeah,
back.
season 2. I hope we get some Mystique. Legacy. I don't think Loki's been at the height of his pop culture reign long enough to have a legacy yet.
It's tough because it's like he
Saying
has
that,
a
we do know someone who has a dog named after him. So.
true, and I feel like there's starting to be a bit of legacy there in like the sense of if a kid wants to go to a superhero thing but doesn't want to be like your Batman, Spider-Man, or whatever, and they're like, oh, I want to be a bit more of a villain, they go Loki.
Absolutely.
So he's starting to like the MCU has definitely begun a bit of his legacy, and
And as far as
his
I
presence in
know,
those films has started that.
it's like the first major character we've had who was gender fluid, which I mean is absolutely a legacy.
Yeah, no, that's
It
right.
might not be one that's been fully realized yet, though.
Yeah,
The
that's true.
legacy of Mystique, I think, is smaller than it should be, but I also think it's been more impactful in quiet ways.
Yeah.
I feel like the X-Men has always been obviously the voice of the small and the unheard.
Mm.
So Mystique kind of is literally the character projection, isn't it? It's like, oh, Mystique could be me because she could literally be me.
Yeah.
I feel the reboot of the X-Men is going to launch Mystique into the stratosphere. That is my bold claim.
I don't think you're wrong there. I think the legacy from just her presence in the comics and what her characters stood for and stuff, and what the X-Men in general obviously have as well. She's done, like you say, quiet groundwork there. And while to most people probably don't know much and don't realize what she's done for the space, but she has done it there. And I think you're right. The new X-Men that are going to come in for the MCU, if they use Mystique and they use it correctly, which I'm sure they will, I agree. Like it could skyrocket her like pop culture iconicness and the legacy she
With
can
the
have.
size of the MCU now,
Mm.
and the amount of people who will never ever read a comic but will go and watch every Marvel project, the X-Men in the next 5 years, whenever we get their big break, could genuinely be one of the nicest things in the world to see a bunch of people who've ever felt like they don't have a character who represents them find that character and realize that there is a superhero out there for them. And I literally can't wait for that. It's going to be so much fun. I just have to hope the bigots don't ruin it.
Yeah.
In fact, no, we won't let them.
We won't.
Relatability.
Don't know about you, but I feel very trickery on a daily basis.
Yeah, like I guess the kind of question is: do you feel more aligned with Loki, who feels like an outsider, doesn't really feel like he fits in with his family, but doesn't always know why before he finds out his truth? Or do you feel more like Mystique, this person that no one's ever really known, that maybe gets missed easily and no one really sees the true them?
Yeah, I think there's a
I
lot
think
of
they're very relatable characters.
yeah, and I mean even for Loki in the sense of like he's always competing with his older brother and trying to prove himself better, which a lot of siblings deal with.
Yeah,
I think, like you say, with Mystique, that feeling of being forgotten, disappearing into the crowd and stuff. Like, there's a lot of relatability to both characters that are away from like their evil tendencies, should we say?
yes,
There's plenty of depth to both of them that there is plenty of relatability to their issues and problems
exactly.
and struggles.
Just because you feel unseen doesn't mean you can't be a really good villain. Personal preference. Oh, this is techie. I love Tom Hiddleston's portrayal of Loki so much,
mm,
and it's made me adore Loki as a character because there's so much fun to be had.
mm.
However, as we discussed before, the Fox X-Men films of the mid 2000s were a cornerstone of my falling in love with the genre, and Mystique was a big part of them films.
I feel partly similar to you in the sense of like Tom Hiddleston's portrayal of Loki is just biased it so heavily in that character's favor for me because it's just like I just love Loki and I love the character arc that he went on. Whether it was true 100% faithful to how he would be in the comics doesn't matter. I love what this Loki went through and how he got to the end of season 2 of his and yeah, I feel like unfortunately for me Tom Hiddleston's like biased at it one way.
Yeah,
But that doesn't mean we get the MCU Mystique, and suddenly I'm like, yeah, fuck you, Loki. Mystique's way
yeah,
cooler.
yeah. It's definitely a rough one. Right, let's tot it up and see what we
Yes.
think. Iconicness. Did we land on this being Mystique purely because of time since last big outing and still being relevant?
I feel, yes, slightly pips Loki to the post there.
Just for staying power despite not
Yeah.
getting the love she deserves. Yeah, I think that's fair. Individuality. I'd probably err on the side of a draw here.
Yeah. I feel, I think so.
I can't
Because
really think of. I can't think of any reason one of them is more unique than the other.
the only thing is like Loki is based around a god.
Okay, so would you say because Mystique's a more unique creation without as much
Previous
obvious
influence.
inspiration?
Yeah.
Okay, no, I think that's fair actually. I think that's fair. So that puts it at 2-0 Mystique.
Hmm.
Quality of adaptations. Are we
I
going Loki because it's
mm,
slightly more faithful in the popular adaptations?
yeah, I would lean Loki because of that, and also just because of also how solid of a story they told. I think for that
Yeah.
Loki's character.
Yeah, they didn't randomly decide that Loki wasn't allowed to have clothes. So,
Yeah.
bit more faithful to the character. Legacy. I think Mystique having a smaller legacy than she deserves still wins out over Loki not yet fully realizing his legacy.
Yeah, I think Mystique legacy produced from just the comics alone, though maybe not like a huge legacy, has been impactful to a for a small group of people, more so than necessarily Loki's character has.
I mean, Mystique has direct connections to Nightcrawler and Rogue, two of the most beloved X-Men.
Yeah,
I feel like that legacy alone is pretty substantial.
yeah,
That family tree be family treeing.
it do.
So legacy will be going to Mystique, making it 3-1 Mystique.
Mm,
Relatability, I do think goes Loki. I feel the notion of the big brother, the elder
mm,
sibling, the sibling kind of rivalry is a
yeah,
lot more prevalent of a thing to relate to.
yeah, and especially in terms of the MCU one, like them like relating to the idea of like coming to the realization of you can be your own person and have your own
Yeah.
sort of story.
I mean, I get it. All my siblings are incredibly jealous of me because I'm just so amazing. Like, it's a much more relatable story. Personal preference. I go Mystique here.
I go Loki, so that makes it a draw.
Awesome. That one was actually pretty easy. So that makes it 3-2 to Mystique in the end, overall.
There we go.
I think that is a very fair scoreline.
Yeah,
These
I
are
would
both
agree.
absolute monsters in the pop culture powerhouse space, and I hope to see much more of both of these characters over the next 10,
Yeah,
15,
especially
20
Mystique.
years. I'm very excited for the X-Men to fully return to
Yeah.
Marvel's
Yeah.
control. But that is it from us this
Yes.
week. We'll be back again next week with another pop culture powerhouse.
We
Don't
will.
forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you then.
I'll see you next week.